Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. My guest for today's Rethink Leadership podcast is Michelle T. Davies, the Global Head of Sustainability for Ernst & Young Law. Michelle advises clients and industry bodies across energy transition, climate, and all aspects of sustainability. Her clients include those who are participating in sourcing clean energy and sustainability solutions, as well as those providing the financing for these, including governments, banks, and corporates. Michelle has been granted industry recognition, including being listed as a leader in renewables by the Lawyer Hot 100 Lawyers. And as a senior leader in one of the top 5, Michelle's leadership journey, beliefs and practices make interesting listening, and we take a deeper dive into all that through our conversation. We're pleased to make a donation to Llanwao, the superb charity in Wales, with a mission to eradicate homelessness for young people and vulnerable women. You can find out more at www.llamau.org.uk. Michelle, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your work and your passions.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, for inviting me to do this podcast with you. It's been great getting to know you over the last few months. I am Michelle Davies. I'm known as Michelle T. Davies, and there's a reason for that, because for 44 years I was Michelle Thomas. And so rather than take my surname into my new surname, I took it as a middle name. So I'm Michelle Thomas Davies, Michelle T. Davies. So I'm quite passionate about that T. If anyone who knows me will know I like the T to be there. I am currently Global Head of Sustainability and Clean Energy for EY. What that means is in the legal practice, I pull the team together and drive forward our practice across the net zero energy transition, and also helping clients understand sustainability regulation in conjunction with other service lines within EY, so specialists in our consulting and our tax and our ESG practices, bring those together to deliver a holistic integrated solution where law just slots into that. I've been at EY now for almost 3 years. It genuinely is an incredible organisation. Sustainability is at its core and at its heart in terms of how we approach the sector. You can probably tell that one of my passions is sustainability. I've been involved in the sector for over 25 years. I absolutely live and breathe it, and I'm not in any way put off or demotivated by things that are currently happening globally. For me, the train has left the station. This is the direction of travel. We all just have to pivot and realign ourselves so that we can ensure that at all times sustainability is valuable for everybody who is participating in it. So sustainability, huge passion of mine. My other passions, like most people, are my family, my husband and my son, who you just saw, Jeremy, as well as living in the moment and living in the countryside, which is where I live in Monmouthshire, being outside, appreciating all the natural beauty that is free for us to enjoy. Yeah, so those are my main passions.
Well, I could have answered that same question in the same way with the passions. Living in the countryside, I'm quite close to you, being in the Cotswolds, and it is about coming back and connecting back to nature, and I can understand that from your passions around sustainability and around what you're doing. You'll see that happening. You live and breathe it, but it's also under your foot as you're walking in the hills there as well. Just an aside question. There are a few organizations I'm working with, and there is now a discussion around sustainability and regenerative leadership, regenerative companies. Do you have the same kind of discussion internally? Do you see a difference?
So asking that question now is pertinent. If you'd asked it 12 months ago, I think I would have given you a different answer, Jeremy, if I'm honest. I think that for most organizations right now, there is so much disruption and so much uncertainty that everything they do has to enable the business to survive valuably. So in my experience, very few organizations are going above and beyond what they need to do. What drives what they need to do? Well, first, regulation. Secondly, what their key stakeholders require. So even if regulation doesn't require you to do something, if your shareholders or investors or customers are requiring you to do something, or indeed your employees, if you want to retain and recruit the best, require you to do something, they'll do that. And then a small percentage of organizations will see what they have to do as being more than that, being more than what the regulation and their stakeholders require, and being something that is going to position themselves to be more financially valuable in the future. But not many organizations are prepared to make that investment now, unless one of those two others require it, unless they can see something hitting a value point in the next 12 to 24 months, i.e. either their share price, which is very difficult to shift from sustainability action. It can go down, as we know, as a result of negative profile, but difficult to shift it up, or if it hits the bottom line. And if it's not going to do that, they will struggle to do more than is required, unfortunately. And that is just where we are at the moment. I think as we come out of this period where we're sort of all realigning and adjusting to the new world order, as we emerge out of that, I think things will get back on track and people will see the wood through the trees in terms of how sustainability can really impact value, and they will become regenerative rather than just sustainable. But right now, I don't think we're there. Sorry, it's a long-winded answer, Jeremy, but I think that's where we are.
I'd agree with you. And we're more reliant on leaders like you who are forces for good as much as forces for business to keep that voice there. Like you say, the train has left the station on this, so we have to keep that burbling away while we figure out how this new world order is going to figure out and figure out whether the current brand of capitalism will allow us to do that. This
and
is
I
where
think
we're locked in as well, isn't it?
No, absolutely, Jeremy. And I know you advise organizations as well as I do, and my organization does. And as advisors, we need to be cognizant of that. We need to understand where our clients are in the real world within which they operate. And we have to help them make the right decisions for their longevity, for their value, and for their long-term sustainability, which also, though, ensures that they are on the right track so that when the whole sustainability agenda picks up pace again, which it absolutely will, for reasons I can explain if anybody's interested, it will happen. They are not so far behind that they become stranded. And that's my concern, right? For a whole host of organizations. I think everybody thinks, oh, we've been given a bit of a breathing space. We can take our foot off the pedal. You might be able to lessen the pressure on the pedal, but don't take your foot off. Because when this comes back around, you could find that you simply cannot catch up. And at that point, you're in trouble. So it's going to be super important that we as advisors enable our clients to operate their businesses in a way that enables them to be valuable in the short term, but which doesn't prejudice their value in the mid to long term.
Yeah, well said, Michelle. And it's easy to see why you're a role model, not just for women in leadership, but for men, for other businesses. You're a senior leader in EY as well. And you talk very eloquently about these passions of yours, but also from that business perspective, the reality of where we are. It's taken a while to get there, and I know the road hasn't always been easy. So could you take us back to your journey and to from where you started, where you are now, including the challenges and breakthroughs that you made?
Yeah, sure. So the people who know me and have heard me speak will know this story very well. So I was a bog standard M&A lawyer, buying and selling companies and businesses globally. And I got into this area, this sector, purely by chance. I was asked by my law firm. I'd just left the city to live back in Wales, which didn't last very long, actually. I think it only lasted about a month, and I was back in London and traveling again. But would I look after this particular client who was undertaking a renewable energy transaction, which I did. And I ended up working for that client for almost 2 years. Apologies if you can hear a buzzer going. And through the course of that 2 years, I learned a huge amount about clean energy and sustainability. And I could sense that this was an area that was going to become more important. The UK government was starting to look at providing subsidies for certain technologies. And I asked my business if I could go to a conference in New York. And there were very, very few conferences of this kind at the time. I mean, it's over 25 years ago, right? So there were very few. So off I go to New York and I sit there and I listen and I come back and I say to my partners, there's this thing called climate change. And it's going to be really big. And it's going to be all over the news and it's going to be all over the newspapers. And we need to focus on it. And at the time, this is, well, Michelle, you're doing really well on the M&A. Just have that as your hobby in the background. And then I started to build up a practice. And they said, okay, spend 50% of your time on it. Well, I didn't. I spent 100% of my time. And we built up a really big team. And we absolutely loved working in the sector. And we were at the forefront of the sector. When we took the team globally, we would work in brand new markets that had never had any renewable energy, and we would work with the development finance institutions and the government in pulling it all together and making it happen. And the team really loved it. We had the best team, and we really felt that we were making a difference, as well as bringing value to our law firm. And so I continued doing that within my law firm and had a really fantastic career. My colleagues were fantastic. My law firm was hugely supportive of everything I was doing. And then about 5 years ago, EY got in touch and said, would you come and head our global sustainability practice? We're going to be, for law, we're going to be building this big practice. And you can slot in to the whole of EY's sustainability expertise, which is huge, Jeremy. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of experts. And it was a massive decision to come out of a law firm to go into a big four. I mean, it was the biggest decision of my life. I knew I wanted to marry my husband. I knew I wanted my child, etc. But I had never worked outside of a law firm environment. But it was the right thing to do, because I became absolutely immersed in sustainability in a way that I would never have been if I had stayed in a law firm, because I get to work with experts across so many different areas. We've got a session, a web session coming up on carbon and the carbon markets, and I've got experts from South Africa in our tax team, and I've got people from our consulting team, and I've got all over the place, all these different people, financial experts, all coming together to talk about the carbon markets. So it's an incredible place to be, full of, really super brilliant, committed, enthusiastic people. In the course of that journey, I then got asked to go onto various boards and various advisory boards, where I learned a huge amount. So I've been involved in various, carbon bodies, in university bodies, in trade industry bodies, not just here, but in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, in the UK. So it's been a really fantastic journey, and I genuinely feel privileged and delighted that I've been able to stay in a sector like this.
Well, what a journey from M&A lawyer to global head of sustainability in EY. And the passion comes singing through as you're talking, Michelle. And I can just imagine that conversation 25 or 30 years ago when you came back and said, just heard about this thing called climate change. And I think we should get in there and then look at where we are now. Incredible. And I can completely understand also how becoming a board advisor across different sectors gave you a different point of view on that as well. So it leads me to the obvious next question for you personally as a leader, Michelle. What are the two or three big lessons you've learned about yourself as you've gone through this journey? Because that's quite a big shift that you made from an M&A lawyer and then taking on this. And what are the lessons you've learned about others?
Yeah. So I have been asked this question a few times, and my answer doesn't change. I think when you progress your career and you get into a position of leadership, it's very tempting to think about your own position and trying to maneuver your career so that it is the best for you. And you do have to do that to a degree. You absolutely have to do that. But I think your guiding lights, and my guiding lights always were, what is the right thing for the organization I'm in? What is going to be best for that organization? Even though it might be best for me, it might not be best for that organization. What is truly best for my clients, even though it might be better for my organization and me to do it a particular way? What is truly best for my clients? And what is best for my people, my team? And I think that if, as you progress through your career, every key decision you make ticks those three boxes as well as being right for you, then you won't go far wrong. If every time you're going to make a decision or try to achieve something with your career, check back in, does it tick each of those three? And if it does, then it's right for you. If it doesn't, it won't end up being right for you. It will come back to bite you. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson is to listen. So I listen to whatever is being said, particularly in the sector, and I ask lots of questions, and I'm not afraid to look stupid because I know now at 58 and having done this for such a long time, I do sort of know the sector, but I don't know everything about it. And so I will ask questions and I will listen to people. And I love listening in when people are having a conversation because I learn so much. And the other thing that I've learned is you can't come back and do this again. So, and I know everybody says this, but have fun, make it fun, have a laugh, think, have fun with your clients and enjoy the people who are with you and bring people into your team who enjoy it and are fun. And you then create something that is quite special. So those are the things I've learned. And also, people who are negative and are draining, really try to understand what motivates them so that you can help them stop being like that. But if they can't stop being like that, then if they have a really detrimental effect on the wider team, you've got to deal with that situation as well.
Yes, that goes back to your North Star, doesn't it? That 4-point star of the organization, the clients, and the team, and what's best for them as well as you.
Mm.
Your operational role can be guided by that. So if somebody isn't doing that or
Yeah,
something changes, of course I can see that. And
yeah,
and I have realized, certainly doing a podcast, I've realized the importance of active listening.
Always be learning,
Yeah,
I say, Michelle, and always be smiling as well a little bit. There's enough in the world, isn't there, to take us away from that.
exactly.
I couldn't.
Exactly.
So, and what about as you've gone through your career? You talked very briefly there about others who might be negative, but as far as your career as a leader, what has been your experience about others who have really helped you on that way, and maybe
Mm,
others who have got in the way a little bit?
yeah. So I think the people who have really, if I look back at my last law firm and the CEO, he was incredible because he took time to listen, and same in EY now. The people I think who are leading have very similar qualities. They they listen, and they've listened to me, they've understood me, and then they've given me autonomy to get on and do it and haven't breathed down my neck. And I've taken that on board now. So my team know I will give them as much autonomy as they can stand. I'm there to support, but I really like people to prove themselves and just get on with it. And that's what the leaders that have helped me have done. So that would be the first thing. I think the second thing that I love about really strong leaders are those that have got a sense of drive and purpose and are real visionaries and set a clear strategy and expect everybody to be delivering it. I'm not into this sort of management speak, and you listen to somebody say what the strategy is and you come away thinking, well, I could have written that in 2 words. That's not a strategy. It's a mission statement. Can we please have a strategy on where we are now, point A, and what does point B look like, and how are we going to get to point B, and what does point C look like, and what is the pathway ahead, and everyone gets on board. So being strategic, but then having that drive and real energy to motivate everybody, I absolutely love. And I also love leaders who are very clear with their expectations of you. Don't beat around the bush. And it doesn't work for everybody. This is more me. I like clear, grown-up conversations, and I like to have real clarity on what my role is, what am I expected to contribute, the ability to influence that, to say, well, I actually think I can contribute more here, and this is how it's going to be more valuable. And then let's work towards delivering that. So the leaders, it would be those 3 traits, I would say, Jeremy, that I most admire in leaders. And they are the traits that have really helped me develop. And I've been so fortunate that there have been people who have really helped me in that way.
If I take you to the other side of the coin, then what are the 2 or 3 traits that when you look at some modern leaders these days, you think, well, just don't let me anywhere near that person. They're going to damage the organization, the clients, the team, whatever.
I think those that have read too many management books, right? Too many self-help management books, and I can think of a number of people that I've come across in my career, and it's like they're talking a different language. And so I don't like that. I also don't like leaders who, once they get into a position, think they then know it all, Jeremy. So once they get the title, now I know more than everybody else knows about this area because I have the title. That's not a good leader. A leader is somebody who is cognizant of the fact and the need to continue learning, and that they are only as good as their team, right? So and also people who dictate and micromanage. I think really good leaders are there to support. They're to, they should set a direction. They should be there to support, but they should let people get on and deliver. People who are constantly breathing down your neck and on your case, that's not leadership, that's management. And I think that's a really important point to make, right? There are certain people who call themselves leaders, but really they are managers. And there's a huge distinction between managers and leaders.
Yeah, it reminds me of what another guest on this podcast talked about. He said those kind of leaders are not managers, they're damagers. Because they just get in the way. They don't grow the organization. It's my way or the highway. It's this old school 20th century mindset which just comes shining through, and we're not adapting and learning. So you've reinforced that for me, as well as those strong traits of leaders, of which I can align and recognize many of those as well. Of course, with some of the best leaders that I've worked with, and some of those that we see out there. So let me put now the spotlight on you, and how have you kept yourself learning and growing as an individual and as a leader then?
Well, I've said the one listening. I've really taken the time to listen. I think as well, something that I recognize as being really important, probably, not well, a questionable thing to say at the moment, is diversity, D&I. As I've got older, because I came through the law in the 1980s. I graduated in 1988. And in the early 90s, I was working, and it was a very hierarchical, broadly non-diverse environment. Very few female partners in law firms in those days in the city. But it's only really, if I'm honest, it's only really and I think it's since being at EY, which really fosters diversity, not as a tick the box requirement, but because it really gets the value of diversity. I guess as a consultancy, we get it because we're helping our clients grow. But I really get diversity now, and I love diversity of thought and contribution. I love being challenged. I genuinely love being proved wrong. I've got clear ideas, I'm pretty clear on things, but I absolutely love it if I'm proved wrong, and my team will, they don't feel at all. I hope they don't. I don't think they do, because they challenge me on a regular basis to, question some of my decisions, and I love that. So yeah, that would be broadly it.
And it's you're demonstrating though there exactly what you were talking about, these traits of great leaders that you work with, that autonomy and that empowerment of those that are working with you, so that they feel safe enough, psychologically safe, let's call it,
Yeah,
to say, actually, Michelle, there's another point of view here, let's have a discussion or whatever. And it's a great leader who understands that they're not always the smartest people in the room. We might have our expertises, but we're only human, right?
but you won't be. You won't be this smart. I go on calls with my EY colleagues, and I am nowhere near the smartest person in the room, in those meetings or on those calls, because there are some incredibly talented and bright people. And I think what's really great is, as you maybe get a bit more experienced, you home in on what your skill sets are and where you can really add value and where you can't. And that's been really lovely, actually, as I've got older and more experienced, to accept that I'm never going to be as good at this as these people. But this is where I'm really good. This is what I'm really good at. And this is what I've got to focus on. And that's been a really genuinely pleasurable journey to go on, to be in that place where you no longer feel threatened because you can't be all these things, that you're really good at this particular or these particular areas. And that's what I focus on now.
Keeps us learning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're both the same age, and it's so important. I feel it's so important to keep that brain active, to understand there, bring in these, you talked about that diversity of thinking and contribution, thinking quite creatively again, something that we can lose a little bit in modern day, in some modern businesses, for sure. So we've entered into the second quarter of this century. Can you believe that went quickly? And we're eyeing the 2030s ahead at the speed of change out there, which is our competitive currency of today, it seems to be. And there are a lot of leaders who are tuning in to this podcast. What would you say to them as leaders to be mindful of and to focus on as we eye the next 5 years?
That is an amazing question, simply because of where we sit right now, Jeremy. I think, well, my advice to my clients actually is change and disruption is now the norm. We will live, I think, going forward for the rest of our lives, at least, and for the rest of the working lives of the people I'm advising, in a constant period of change and disruption. And therefore, as a leader, you have to be able to contextualize where your business is now, and you'll have a strategy, but you have to have strategies for change. You have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to realign and reassess. That is going to be critical, and the ability, and you'll find that your ability to do that will become normal. It will become a developed skill that you can apply. The people that I've worked with for over 20 years in clean energy and sustainability, where there's a little group of us, and we all, and some of them are in fund managers, some of them are bankers, some of them are CEOs, and we all get together and we chat on a regular basis, and we sort of smile at what's happening at the moment in the sector, because for many people it seems huge that there is this sort of backtracking on the area. And this has happened before, Jeremy. It's happened many times over the last 25 years, but the sector always gets back on track. And the people who are doing really well at the moment are those that went through those bumpy times, were able to pivot and able to stay on course. Imagine being in Europe, or for example, even in the UK, when 1 minute your business was being subsidized and the next everything was taken away from you. What do you do? Imagine going into COVID when all the financial taps for funding and finance turned off. What do you do? And people found a way. They pivoted and accessed new markets and new opportunities, and refined and redefined their business. So I think I would say to leaders, this isn't going to be something I think that happens every 5 to 10 years. It's something that is going to be pretty constant now. At least over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to experience a huge amount of change, and it's going to be critical that you accept that as the new norm, and that you have systems and processes in place that enable you to pivot and redefine effectively.
Yeah, I like that. And paraphrasing hugely, knowing what to do when you don't know what to do, it seems to be where we're going to right now.
Exactly.
But that word pivot, reassess, redefine, realign, and keep going again and again. Some great points for those tuning in. And I'm sure many who are, Michelle, will want to connect, keep the conversation going. So how do people do that?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. So Michelle T. Davies, EY. Or you can email me. I'm very happy for you to email me, and they can get my email address through you, Jeremy.
Right. Well, Michelle T. Davies, thank you very much for joining me. What a thoroughly insightful and prescient chat. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much, Jeremy, for having me. It's been great to do this today, but more importantly, it's been great to get to know you, and I hope we continue to stay in touch.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.